this is also a very important story in Iran. So, in the city of Erbil in Kurdistan in Iraq, northern Iraq, there was a surprise rocket attack with missiles launched from Iran. We have a little bit of a video of that. Let's just take a quick look. So, not
dramatic.
great. That was actually near the American consulate in Erbil. To be clear, not on the American consulate in Erbil, but nearby. There were no American personnel who were injured or who were killed in the attack. So it's not the same as that rocket attack that we saw during the Trump administration, which eventually led to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. We're not there yet. However, this is still a very important development. Let's put this up there on the screen, because the Iranians specifically took credit for that missile barrage near the US consulate in Iraq. Now, all of this matters in the context of the JCPOA, or the Iranian nuclear deal, which was reportedly nearing finalization with the P5+1 powers. That's everybody as well as China in terms of the UN Security Council. Now, why does this matter? Because we're nearing the deal, and then all of a sudden we see this Iranian missile attack. Now, this missile attack is almost certainly occurring and was launched by the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Now, we've spoken with Dr. Trita Parsi before. He's my professor in graduate school, and he has a kind of a deep view inside to the Iranian regime, and he explained it this way. Not about this attack specifically, but in previous provocations whenever there was a diplomatic breakthrough with Iran, which is that Iran is not a monolith. The IRGC is separate from the Iranian military, which is separate from the, Ayatollah, which is separate from the president's office. What happened is that there are factions inside of Iran which do want peace. The civilians are suffering, obviously.
Yeah.
But the IRGC, they make a ton of money circumventing the sanctions and by running some of the most lucrative smuggling routes to a large population for the Iranians. Thus, the nuclear deal, which would lessen sanctions, is actually a direct economic threat to people who are inside the IRGC, who are looting the country and who are using the sanctions in order to have dramatic markup and use their navy and all that in order to bring illicit goods into the country, as well as oil and all of that. So this can be seen in the context of the hawk hardline elements in Iran trying to sink the Iranian nuclear deal as it nears finalization. We saw the exact same thing happened actually near the signing of the nuclear deal back in 2016 when Barack Obama was president. Remember, everyone, that the Iranians took hostages, those two U.S. Navy boats?
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions about what happened with those boats, but basically they were taken into custody in video, and it's humiliating, and John Kerry had to go save them or whatever. And this was a huge political problem, obviously, for Obama. Well, they're trying to create the same situation, the Iranians specifically, to rub it in the face and humiliate the Americans in order to discourage a nuclear deal, especially the IRGC. So just keep in mind here, this is being done by elements within Iran who don't want peace. A nuclear deal is a direct threat to them. That doesn't lessen the geopolitical tension and the situation on behalf of the Biden administration. Already, this is obviously being claimed by the most hawkish elements on the right, or even in the U.S., to say, hey, now look, we can't have any nuclear deal.
We got to
kill the nuclear
deal anyway.
They didn't want the deal anyway, but now this
hardliners.
is ammo. And then, the people understand our politics and the way that they can play into that. But this is very much a test, Krystal, of the Biden administration as they near possible completion of the nuclear deal, although there is some problems.
We'll get to that in just a minute. It was very noteworthy that the Biden administration was at pains to say this was not an attack on our consulate.
Right.
So of course they condemned it, but they made it clear that they did not see it as a direct attack on our interests there. Iran says that this was in retaliation for an Israeli strike in Syria that killed 2 members of the Revolutionary Guard. So that's what they're publicly saying, that this is about Israel. And we just told you what a mess it is in Syria and how this created these proxy wars and tensions all around the globe. So they're saying that's what that's about. Other observers are also pointing out that what is happening in Iraq right now is they are trying to form a government. And there's questions about how many of sort of Iran's, proxies and affiliated politicians will end up in that government.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was pointed to as another potential cause of this attack. And then obviously from our perspective, the other clear thing here is because it was so close to our newly being built, actually, consulate there in Erbil, that this was also trying to upset the apple cart with regards to nuclear negotiations. Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen about where we are with regards to the Iran deal, because this isn't the only threat to that deal coming together. Let me give you a little bit of backstory. So Biden, when he was running for president, he said he wanted to, re-enter very quickly into this deal. But at the beginning of his administration, he and his administration, they really dragged their feet. And this became a problem because in the meantime, there were elections in Iran, and the previous sort of more open faction was kicked out, and now you have more hardliners in charge. They took that opportunity after the election to say, oh, hey, we want to give us some time because we want to rethink our strategy. What they were really doing was upping their nuclear program in an attempt to put more pressure on us to come back to the table so that they could secure a better deal. So now here we are back at the table. All signs indicate that they were very close to coming to terms on a new deal, and then all hell breaks loose in Ukraine with Russia. So what Russia is doing, and they have a say in this deal, they are party to it, what they're saying is, hey, we're not down with this thing unless we get specific written guarantees in the Iranian nuclear deal that we are not going to be sanctions-free when it comes to Iran. And we're going to continue to be able to do free trade with them and, collaborate militarily. We want to have written guarantees there. The U.S. is saying, absolutely no way, non-starter. We're not using this deal to, have these other sort of superfluous agreements involved. The two potential paths forward are a sort of more narrow deal, something that the Iranians have already ruled out, or the very latest thing floated by the U.S. is, if this is truly a red line, Russia won't go along, maybe we'll just take this same deal and basically take it out of this particular framework and try to do the deal without Russia. Would that work? Would that happen? Would the Iranians go for it? No idea. But, a lot of blame does fall at the feet of the Biden administration, who dithered when they could have re-entered this deal very quickly after he took office, when you had more favorable circumstances. And now by waiting, here we are in the precipice, and the whole thing could very well fall apart. Now, it may still come together. I mean, some of these things, I feel like it always looks like they're, hanging by a thread and they're about to come apart when they finally do come through. But they have really risked their ability to rejoin this agreement, which, just a reminder, we were the ones that left, and the Iranians actually held up their end of the deal for quite a while after we backed out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I misspoke earlier. P5+1 includes Germany, not China. Well, China is in it, but they're part of the permanent powers. Anyway, what's important is that those powers, specifically the Europeans, what are we dealing with right now? An oil crisis. What do the Iranians have? A lot of oil. And so this is part of why Russia, in a way, which is also party to the deal, they don't necessarily have an interest in allowing Iranian oil to flow because it could make up some of their back channels. So they might want to kill the deal. Now, the Chinese have always bought Russian oil, and they like Iranian oil. They like it. So do the South Koreans. So there is pressure from Asia in order to get this deal done. The Ukraine conflict both complicates this, but also makes it so that the West is probably more likely to give up as much as possible to the Iranians, given that they need oil prices to come down. So, in a way, it's both the best and the worst time in order to secure this deal. We'll see if it ends up happening. But the missile attack, it's a test against the Biden administration. Which way are they going to fall? How hawkish are the elements inside of the United States? Can they exactly push things one way or the other? They're a big test of European diplomacy and of their posture whenever it comes to energy policy. And finally, it's also a test of China and of Russia and how they're going to conduct themselves. Everybody's got competing interests. And so how exactly the deal ends up shaking out, we'll see. But in terms of the attack itself, it's not a good sign for if you want to see this eventually get inked That being said, it doesn't completely rule it out at the same time. I know there were a lot of questions around that.
Yeah, and as you said, important to this whole context is I'm looking today's national average gas prices $4.33. So that
filled up my tank this weekend and sucked.
That definitely puts more pressure on the West to try to do what it takes to get this done. And you see that in the rhetoric from the Biden administration trying to say, hey, this attack, we condemn it, but it wasn't really about us. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.